are reacting to his story part 5. Wait, no, part 4. And let's go.
Kid on the mound laughed at me in front of the whole team and said, "You throw like a girl." I picked up my glove and walked off the field. The other boys were still laughing when I got to my mom's car. My older sister was in the passenger seat with her college jacket on. She took one look at my face and the glove in my hand and said, "You're not quitting. Get in. We're going to the backyard." My sister pitched for her college team and had a fastball scouts drove 3 hours to watch. She handed me a ball in the backyard and told me to throw it at the fence. I threw it and it bounced twice before it got there. She didn't laugh. She walked over and put her hand on my shoulder. "Your elbow's dropping," she said. "Watch me." She wound up and the ball cracked against the fence so loud our neighbor opened his window and yelled at us to keep it down. She turned to me and grinned. "That's what we're going for." She fixed my grip and showed me how her fingers came off the seams last. The next one still took 2 bounces to get there, and I almost threw the glove down, but she just handed me another ball. The one after that hit the fence on 1 bounce. The next night, I hit it on the fly. The night after that, I broke a slat. By the end of the second week, our neighbor stopped opening his window because he knew it was just us. The next game, the kid who laughed at me stepped up to the plate. I was pitching. He smirked at me like he always did. I held the ball the way my sister showed me, my fingers high on the seams. I threw the first pitch and the catcher's mitt cracked so loud the kid flinched. He swung late and the catcher already had it. The second pitch he watched go by for strike 2. On the third pitch he swung so hard, the bat slipped out of his hands and skidded into the dugout. "Strike 3, the umpire said, and the kid just stared at me. I didn't pump my fist or yell. I looked up into the bleachers and found my sister sitting there in her college jacket, and I nodded at her. She nodded back. I throw like my sister, and my sister throws harder than anyone on that field. I bet a kid in class my whole fidget spinner collection that I could keep mine spinning the entire class period. The deal was, if my spinner stopped before the bell rang, I lost everything, but if it didn't, his entire collection was mine. I grabbed my lucky gold spinner out of my bag and sighed because Mrs. Halverson had banned spinners last week, but I was never one to say no to a challenge. I started the timer, and with a hard flick of my finger, my spinner came to life. Mrs. Halverson started patrolling our row first thing. I knocked my pencil onto the floor on purpose and bent down to grab it, cupping my hand over my spinner as she walked right past my desk. She didn't even glance at it, and my spinner kept spinning. A few seconds later, Brennan reached across the aisle pretending to ask for a pencil, but lunged for my spinner out of nowhere. I caught his wrist right before his finger touched it, and he grinned at me. "Bro, it's already over." But my spinner was still going strong as ever. Then the AC kicked on, and a freezing draft fell straight from the vent above my desk. My spinner wobbled hard like it was about to drop, so I hunched over it to block the air. It didn't fall, but it was wobbling bad now. A few minutes later, Mrs. Halverson stopped at the front of the room and pointed right at me. What was the anaconda plan? My spinner was dipping in the corner of my eye, but I had to keep my head up and act normal. It was a Union plan to blockade the South. She nodded and moved on, but my spinner was barely turning. 30 seconds left, and my spinner was about to die. Brennan unzipped his bag and held it open with a smirk. "Bro, it's over. Pay up." I knew I had to do something fast, so I threw my hand up. "Mrs. Halverson, can I grab a tissue?" She nodded, and on my way back, I walked past the open window 2 desks over and fanned my shirt as hard as I could. A gust of wind hit my desk, and my spinner came back to life. The bell rang. My spinner was still spinning on my desk like nothing had happened. I'd done it. I'd actually won, and I pumped my fist in the air. Yes! The whole class turned, and so did Mrs. Halverson. She walked over and saw everything at once. My spinner on my desk, Brennan's open bag of 30 on his desk, and my open bag of spinners on the floor next to my seat. "All right, you two, up here. Bring me both bags." Brennan handed his over without a word. I picked up mine off the floor and dropped it on top of his. She turned both bags upside down over her drawer, and 60 spinners hit the wood. Then she reached over and plucked the still spinning gold one right off my desk. I won the bet, but had nothing to show for it as I watched my lucky spinner and the rest disappear as she slid the drawer shut. The judges laughed when my autistic son pulled out a Rubik's Cube at the talent show. "What can you even do with that little thing?" Caleb climbed onto the stool and set the cube down without saying a word. I watched his hands start moving before the judges even stopped laughing. His hands tore across the cube in a blur of twists and clicks. 7 seconds later, he set it down, solved. He'd been doing this since he was 4. The judges stopped smirking. He turned the stool to face the wall and solved the next cube without without looking. His fingers found the edges by feel, working corners he couldn't see. The gym started murmuring. A teacher walked up and scrambled a fresh cube. Caleb tied on a blindfold, felt the cube like he was reading Braille, and started twisting. 18 seconds later, he held up a solved cube. The applause was real now. He pulled out a board with 25 scrambled cubes in a 5x5 grid. The gym went silent, except for the clicking. He picked them up one by one, solving each in seconds and placing them to match a pattern only he could see. When he placed the last cube, the school logo was staring back at the audience in perfect pixels. Caleb stood up and bowed, and the gym went crazy, screaming and applauding. The vice principal walked past the judges' scores and handed Caleb the trophy herself. He took it, set it on the floor next to him, and reached for another cube. The judge who'd laughed first walked over with her hand out, but Caleb didn't look up. She finally lowered her hand and walked back to her seat. The gym was still cheering, but Caleb hadn't noticed. He was already 3 seconds into the next cube. I was already late for work, so I threw on my Heelys and rolled out the door. I dropped into a full Naruto stride, arms pinned back, and flashed past the bus stop crowd before they looked up, because this was my 3rd late this month, and my boss swore the next one was my last. The Heelys weren't a joke to me. They were the only thing fast enough to save the job I couldn't afford to lose, so I kept kicking, eyes on my watch, doing the math on whether I'd make it. That's why I never saw the foot. 1 second I was flying, the next my chin skipped off the concrete and I slid 3 feet on my face. I rolled over and a kid was standing over me, one hand on his little brother's stroller, leaning down, losing it. "No way, you're a grown man in roller skates. What kind are you?" He laughed so hard he let go of the stroller, which rolled off the curb into the street, and I heard a truck coming. The kid was screaming for his brother. "Leo!" I was still half on the ground, but my spidey senses kicked in, so I shoved off and clicked onto the wheels. With one hard push, they caught the asphalt, throwing me across the road faster than my legs ever could. I got both hands on the stroller and shoved it to the far sidewalk as the truck blew past close enough to slap me with wind. The kid waddled to the stroller and held it tighter than ever. The baby was screaming his head off, alive and furious. My hands were shaking, but I didn't stay longer than I needed because all I could think about was the clock and how now I was the kind of late my boss warned me about. So I did the only thing my body knew how to do. I tapped my heels and rolled. I rolled into the office to find my boss waiting at my desk. "You've got to be kidding me. Late again, and you roll in on those toys like a kid at recess." He held out a sheet of paper. "I told you what the next time would cost you. Clean out your desk." I was reaching for it when the door flew open. A woman rushed in with a stroller, a kid behind her, and went straight to my boss. "Daniel, Leo's okay," but his stroller rolled into the road and a man caught it before a truck hit him. That's when the kid saw me and grabbed her sleeve. "Mom, that's him. That's the guy who caught Leo on his Heelys." My boss looked at the stroller, then the toys he'd just been firing me for, then the paper in his hand. He couldn't get a word out, so I left it with him, nodded, and said, "If you'll excuse me, sir, I'm gonna roll out." I tapped my heels and rolled to my desk, dropped into my chair, leaned back, and kicked my Heelys up on it, because they were never a joke. They were the real deal. My new dog ran into Dad's leg while chasing his ball, and my face instantly dropped in horror. Dad's eyes teared up and he sneezed for the 10th time, then pointed at Lucky. "That dog's going back to the pound." He picked Lucky up while he whimpered, but I instantly snatched him from Dad's arms and locked myself into the bathroom. Dad pounded the door. "Come out right now or you're grounded." But I yelled back, "I'm only coming out when you let Lucky stay." He replied, "Not happening. I'm allergic." So I put a surgical mask around Lucky's face and sent him a picture. "Now he can't lick you, Dad." I felt like a genius, but Dad yelled, "That's not how it works," and slid a paper under the door. I picked it up and my heart dropped. My birthday parties and Christmas presents for the next 8 years, or Lucky staying. I could only have one. I teared up, but when Lucky brushed up against my leg like I was his only friend, I circled Lucky and slid the paper back. Silence. Then suddenly, bang. Dad threw his shoulder into the door. "I'm coming in." My legs shook, and I knew we were screwed as the only way out was a tiny window I was too small to fit through. Dad continued hitting the door, and I cried out, "Please, Dad, Lucky's my only friend." He said, "Then this will be a lesson to make friends like normal kids." The door splintered as he hit it again, and my heart broke when Lucky started cowering behind me. The door slammed again, and eventually broke open. Dad stormed in, panting and red in the face. "Where's that damn dog?" Spit flew from his mouth and he looked around at the empty bathroom. I pointed at the open window. "Lucky got so scared of you he ran away." My voice shook. Dad smirked and crossed his arms. "Well, Well, at least he's gone. He walked out. I wiped my tears, then peered behind the broken door to make sure he was gone. That's when I lifted the toilet tank and pulled Lucky out. He was soaking wet and wagging his tail in my arms. We ran into my room where I locked the door and took out his favorite toy. Our teacher stormed into class with a mysterious red stain on his shirt sleeve. My best friend whispered, "Mr. Grant's sleeve looks like it was soaked in something red, and look at the huge bags under his eyes." He snapped at us to stop. The whole class held its breath. This wasn't like our teacher at all. Did something horrible happen? Mr. Grant barked out questions and targeted students avoiding his eyes. My friend slipped me a note. Something is definitely wrong. He was the nicest person in the world yesterday, and now he's acting like he wants to strangle someone. When I looked at Mr. Grant's sleeve again, I thought that it looked a lot like blood. He caught me looking and glared before putting his jacket on, hiding the stain. He then continued his lesson on the value of lime in gardens, saying, "It's a useful aid in breaking down dead matter." I didn't hear the rest as I looked down at the mud on his usually clean shoes. Between a stain that looked like blood and evidence pointing to Mr. Grant being up late in the mud, it was starting to look like he had buried a body. Mr. Grant's phone rang, and he answered it immediately. "You found her, didn't you? I knew it. I knew it would come to this." My friend slipped me another note. "Do you think this is about his wife? I heard rumors they were having problems." I wrote back, "Do you think Mr. Grant is capable of offing her?" He looked up, as if suddenly remembering we were there. "Class is dismissed. Get out." Everyone scrambled to grab their things and run out as fast as possible. But as I rushed past Mr. Grant's desk, he pointed at me. I expect you to still make our meeting." My friend cornered me as soon as we were in the hallway, demanding to know what he meant. I explained that I was supposed to meet with him about my final project, but now I had no idea what would happen. My hands were shaking when I knocked on the door. Mr. Grant called for me to come in, and I took a seat across from him. I tried to ignore the red stain on his sleeve as he leaned towards me, saying, "I've been disappointed with your work lately, but I don't think we need to worry about that anymore." He then slowly reached down and opened one of his desk drawers. I couldn't take it anymore and bolted out of my seat. "Please, I won't tell anyone. Just don't hurt me." Mr. Grant narrowed his eyes as he pulled out a Chromebook. "I checked this out from the school library for you to help with your project. Why would I hurt you?" Sweat dripped down my forehead. Because you offed your wife?" Mr. Grant stared at me for a solid minute before busting out laughing. Finally, he explained, "I was out late drinking red wine and had to walk home in the mud. That call during class was from a private investigator I hired to collect proof that my wife's been cheating on me. He called a divorce lawyer right after. The second my mom's minivan turned the corner, I looked down at my dog and said, "Wally, we're about to break every single rule Mom has." Wally exploded off his hind legs, tail whipping so hard his whole back end swung sideways into the wall. I was home alone for the first time. I had 4 hours before Mom got back, so I bolted into the kitchen, planted my foot on a drawer handle, and hauled myself straight up onto the counter. Mom said she'd ground me for a month if she ever caught me up here. I tore through the cabinets and grabbed a bag of chips in one hand and a loaf of bread in the other. Mom said no snacks before dinner. I called down to Wally, who was spinning circles below me. Mom said get off the counter. Mom said don't you dare feed the dog people food. I grinned down at him with the bag of chips still in my hand. But guess what, buddy? Mom's not here. First, I laid 2 slices of white bread on the plate. Then I dug into the fridge and slathered 1 slice with peanut butter, then strawberry jelly on top, then a big squirt of yellow mustard. Wally was watching me with his huge brown eyes locked on the plate. Want a taste? I tossed him a marshmallow and he caught it in the air. That's when my phone buzzed on the counter. Mom. My heart stopped. I wiped peanut butter off my hand and answered. Hi, Mom. Hey, baby. What are you up to? I looked at the demolished kitchen where Wally was licking marshmallow off his nose. Just reading a book. That's my boy. I love you. She hung up. I stared at the phone while Wally tilted his head at me. Then I got back to work. I dumped a handful of marshmallows onto the bread and smashed them flat with my palm. I added 3 pickle slices for crunch. I crushed a fistful of cheese puffs and sprinkled the orange dust over the top. Then I drew a big zigzag of chocolate syrup across everything. I pressed the second slice down so hard peanut butter oozed out the sides. Wally, behold, I took my first bite leaning over the plate so the syrup wouldn't drip on my shirt. It was disgusting, but it was my first taste of freedom, and that made it the best thing I had ever eaten. I tore off a corner and held it down to Wally. He caught it and chewed with that goofy open-mouthed chew dogs do, then sat right back down for more. I looked around at the crumbs on the counter, the orange dust on my hands, and the peanut butter stuck to my dog's nose. Nobody was coming to stop me. I still had 3 hours and 53 minutes left. I'd be dead if Mom saw the kitchen like this, but that was a problem for future me. I grabbed 2 more slices of bread. Wally, let's do it again. I finally worked up the courage to pass my crush the note, but my teacher snatched it from my hands. You know the punishment for passing notes. He opened it and started reading aloud. I really like you, Tracy. Will you go to the dance with me? I felt my face go red as the whole class laughed, but the teacher had this strange, smug grin. grin. "Aw, you like Tracy, do you? Well then, you should go talk to her." He moved my chair next to hers, and when I sat down, Tracy angled her whole body away from me. But he just pushed her chair closer, forcing her shoulder to touch mine. She was clearly uncomfortable by what he was doing, but he didn't care, and even physically forced us to hold hands, despite Tracy saying no. She looked disgusted by me, and the whole class mocked us, but he only laughed harder. Every day after that, for some reason, he embarrassed us more. He constantly asked if we kissed yet, and passed our love notes, which he'd written himself around the whole school. Tracy begged him to stop because she was losing friends and getting bullied, but he'd just smile and continue. One day, I walked to his class to talk to him, but he wasn't there. I looked down and saw divorce papers open in his drawer. I wasn't going to look, but the woman's name caught my eye. I glanced down and realized he had been married to Tracy's mother. She was leaving him. My jaw dropped, and I realized that's why he enjoyed making Tracy suffer. He was taking his anger out on this innocent girl, and I was just his tool to do it. And then I saw something else in the drawer, a letter in his handwriting. I got the perfect idea. Everyone came in after lunch, and I stood up and walked to the front. "Proposing to Tracy?" the teacher joked. The whole class laughed, and Tracy looked embarrassed, but I just laughed back and took out his letter. I cleared my throat. "I'm so sorry for cheating. I'll crawl on my hands and knees for you to forgive me." The teacher's face instantly twisted as he realized what I was doing, and he lunged for me. But I ran to the other side of the room. "I'll give you all my money. All of it. Please just stay." These are Mr. Ben's words, everyone. I looked up and saw everybody laughing at him. Someone even had their phone out. He was humiliated and ran out, his legs shaking so hard he tripped and fell. Even Tracy was in hysterics, and after class she came up to me. "That was so funny. I'll go to the dance with you just for that." The substitute hadn't even finished writing her name before a paper ball bounced off her head, and the whole class laughed, and I was the only one who didn't, because she was my mom. She'd made me promise that morning to treat her like any other sub. Nobody at school knew she was my mom, and she wanted to keep it that way, because she'd only started subbing a few weeks ago, and she didn't want me dragged into it. So I sat in the third row with my mouth shut, while her hand shook so bad, she knocked the chalk under the desk. "Just go home, lady," somebody yelled from the back. She picked it up, finished writing her name real slow, Mrs. Pruitt, and dropped it again. I made myself sit there and watch, because I'd promised to stay out of it. A kid named Bryce wadded up his worksheet and chucked it at the trash can behind her head on purpose, missing, and everybody clapped like he'd scored. "She smells like cough drops," one of the girls in front of me said, not even trying to be quiet. "Please open your books to page 40, my mom said, but it came out so soft that nobody moved. "Page 40, a boy copied her in a high squeaky voice, and I knew the shake in her voice was because she was about to cry. I had my hands jammed under my legs, and they were shaking now too. She gripped the edge of the desk and checked the clock. 43 minutes left. I didn't know how I was going to sit there for 43 more minutes. Bryce stood up. "I need a tissue," he said, and walked to the front, grabbed the box off her desk, and dumped the whole thing on the floor. My mom got down on her knees and started picking the tissues up one by one while the whole class laughed, and that was it. I was on my feet before I decided to be. "Knock it off, Bryce. She didn't do anything to you." The room went quiet so fast I could hear the clock ticking. "What did you just say?" he asked. I said it again, slower. "Sit down and leave her alone." Bryce stood there for a second, then sort of laughed. "Whatever," he said, and dropped back into his seat. "It's not even funny anymore," somebody muttered in the back. I got down on the floor and started gathering the tissues, and a girl named Hannah crouched down and helped me without a word. My mom watched us fit the box back together, then turned to the board and wrote page 40 again, and this time, her hand didn't shake. She taught the whole lesson straight through, and nobody touched her again. When the bell rang, she said, "Thank you, class," but she was looking right at me. I never told a single person she was my mom. I just let her be Mrs. Pruitt. We were driving home from a holiday and pulled up to Border Patrol when I suddenly got hit with a memory from the night I was adopted. I was 4 at this exact Border Patrol, feeling my adoptive mom's knife press against me while the guard checked our car. I looked up at her, and she was tapping her window, and it was the exact same rhythm I remembered from that night. The border guard waved us through, and I noticed we were heading through a thick pine forest for over an hour. The exact same forest I remembered driving through for hours. When my dad scratched his neck, I saw the teeth-shaped scar on his finger, and I suddenly remembered biting someone that night after they tried to put tape on my mouth. I knew I had to say something. Why have we never driven this way when coming back from holidays before? My adoptive mom went rigid and quickly said, "This road was blocked." My eyes widened as we passed a red barn, because I suddenly remembered feeling the duct tape come off my mouth right as I saw it. "What were you guys doing the night you adopted me?" My dad tightened his jaw. "We were just driving home from the agency, kiddo." He forced a smile. "Why do you ask?" "Because I remember driving here when I was 4. My mom's hands suddenly shook, and she said, "That's not possible. This is the first time we've ever been here." My dad pulled off the highway onto a dirt road through the trees, and I saw the exact small wooden house at the end of it that I remembered. He parked the car in the driveway, and I turned slowly in my seat to face them. You kidnapped me. I wasn't adopted. I was kidnapped. They stared at me. You're our son. We adopted you. I replied, then show me the papers. They stared at me in silence, unable to speak.
Well, guys, if you like this video, like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, everyone.